13-year-old black kid shocks judge with legal argument. The courtroom falls silent. The courtroom smelled of old wood and tension, a stifling mix that clung to the air like damp heat. 13-year-old Jamal Carter stood at the defendant's table, his small frame dwarfed by the towering oak podium. His hands, trembling but resolute, clutched a crumpled notebook filled with scribbled arguments he'd spent weeks crafting. The room buzzed with whispers, some laced with doubt, others with disdain. Jamal, a black kid from the rough side of Oakwood, was no stranger to judgment. But today he wasn't just facing a judge. He was facing a town divided by prejudice, a system stacked against him, and a crime he didn't commit. It started 3 months ago when a convenience store on 4th Street was robbed. The grainy security footage showed a hooded figure, face obscured, sprinting into the night with a handful of cash. The police didn't hesitate to pin it on Jamal. He was an easy target, black, poor, and often seen wandering the streets after school, delivering groceries for his grandma. "He fits the profile," the officer had said, words that stung like a slap. Jamal's family couldn't afford a lawyer, so he was assigned a public defender, Ms. Larson, a tired woman with too many cases and too little time. But Jamal wasn't about to let his fate be decided by apathy. He'd spent every night in the library, poring over law books, piecing together a defense he hoped would save him. The judge, a gray-haired man named Hargrove, peered over his glasses, his face a mask of skepticism. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice sharp, "you've chosen to represent yourself in this matter. Proceed with your opening statement." The room fell silent, the weight of expectation pressing down on Jamal's narrow shoulders. He took a breath, his heart pounding like a drum, and began. "Your Honor, I'm not a criminal. I'm a kid who's been judged my whole life for the color of my skin. This case isn't about evidence, it's about assumptions." His voice, though young, carried a clarity that made the jurors shift in their seats. He pointed to the prosecution's table, where a smug attorney adjusted his tie. "They say I robbed that store because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But being black in Oakwood doesn't make me guilty." The prosecutor, Mr. Daniels, scoffed, leaning back in his chair. He'd built his case on the flimsy footage and a witness, a store clerk who claimed Jamal looked like the type. But Jamal wasn't deterred. He presented his notebook, pages filled with timestamps from his delivery route, proving he was across town when the robbery happened. He called out the clerk's bias, quoting studies he'd found on racial profiling. "This isn't just about me," he said, his voice rising. "It's about every kid who's been stopped, searched, or blamed because of how they look." The room grew tense, the air thick with unease. Jurors exchanged glances, some uncomfortable, others captivated. Daniels stood, his face flushed, ready to tear into Jamal's argument. "This is a courtroom, not a soapbox," he snapped. "You're a child playing lawyer, and you expect us to take you seriously?" The words were meant to wound, but Jamal didn't flinch. He turned to the judge, his eyes burning with conviction. "If I'm just a child, why am I here fighting for my life? Why does this town think I'm guilty before I even get a chance to speak?" Then came the twist no one saw coming. The courtroom door creaked open, and in walked Mrs. Ellis, the elderly librarian who'd watched Jamal study night after night. Her presence was unassuming, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun, but her voice carried a quiet authority. "Your Honor, I have something to say." She held up a flash drive, her hands steady despite her age. "I found footage from a street camera near the library. It shows Jamal delivering groceries at the exact time of the robbery." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's smugness faltered, his eyes darting to the judge. Mrs. Ellis handed the drive to the bailiff, explaining how she'd spent days combing through footage after overhearing Jamal's plight. "This boy deserves a chance," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "He's not the problem this town's prejudice is." The judge called a recess to review the evidence. Jamal sat, his heart racing, as Ms. Larson whispered, "You did good, kid." But the weight of the moment wasn't lost on him. He wasn't just fighting for himself, was fighting for every kid in Oakwood who'd been dismissed, stereotyped, or silenced. The new footage was clear. Jamal was nowhere near the store. The figure in the hoodie was taller, older, and unmistakably not him. When court resumed, Judge Hargrove's face was unreadable. He cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the silent room. "Mr. Carter, your preparation and passion have not gone unnoticed. The evidence presented today raises serious doubts about the prosecution's case." He paused, his gaze softening. "The charges against you are dismissed." The courtroom erupted. Some cheered. Others muttered in disbelief. Jamal's grandma, sitting in the back, wept openly, her hands clasped in prayer. Jamal stood frozen, his notebook slipping from his hands. He'd won, but the victory felt bittersweet. The system had tried to crush him, and it would try again if he didn't keep fighting. As he left the courthouse, reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing. Jamal ignored them, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Mrs. Ellis caught up to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're stronger than you know," she said. "Don't let this town forget it." Jamal nodded, a spark of determination reigniting in his chest. He wasn't just a kid anymore, was a voice, a force, a symbol of what could change. The case left Oakwood shaken. Whispers of reform began to circulate, and Jamal's story spread, inspiring kids like him to speak up. The prejudice that had defined the town for decades was cracking, not because of a single trial, but because one boy dared to stand tall. His argument wasn't just legal, it was a cry for humanity, a demand to be seen beyond the color of his skin. In the weeks that followed, Jamal started a youth group, teaching other kids about their rights. He wasn't naive, he knew change wouldn't come easy, but he also knew he'd sparked something bigger than himself. The courtroom had fallen silent that day, not out of shock, but out of respect for a truth too long ignored. What do you think? Can one voice expose a community's flaws? Or is justice still out of reach for those judged by their skin?